Hey guys, Tom Barclay here. Just doing a review after Tottenham's very disappointing night up at Anfield. As you can tell, I wasn't there, but I did watch the game on TV, which was quite interesting, seeing particularly some of the post-match analysis from the likes of Jamie Redknapp and Michael Dawson and Jamie Carragher, which is pretty damning, to be honest, of Tottenham as a club in their recent history, but also of the performance in particular. But I mean, my take on it was a meek performance from Spurs in what felt like their biggest game of the season. Everyone knows going into this game, they had a raft of injuries, they look really tired, and they are mitigating factors. And Liverpool away is the hardest game in world football right now, I think. Particularly in a night match at Anfield's always had, a lot of teams have struggled there. I mean, obviously, famously Barcelona when they had that turnaround a few years ago. But many teams have struggled. But I think the fact that Spurs went in with a 1-goal lead, even with that, I think most people thought Liverpool would still get through because of the quality they've got and the sort of form they're in and how imperious they look under Arne Slot. But the manner of the defeat and not to have a single shot on target throughout the whole game, given what an Ange Postecoglou team at its best is supposed to be, front foot attacking football. And I am aware that that's difficult when you've got injured players and your players are so tired right now, was just really limp and just very disappointing. I think the only one positive I can think of from the game was I actually thought Kevin Danzo had a good performance on debut. He looked quick. I thought his passing was quite impressive. It was quite accurate out from the back, but that is about it, really. I guess Ben Davies actually tried his best, but really after that, it was poor. I mean, Anton Kinski made some good saves, but for a player who I do believe is good with his feet and is more suited to Postecoglou's style of play, he wasn't on his A game on that front today, and quite a few times kicked it out of play. So if you're going to play like that, you've got to be on point in that way. And the pressing from Liverpool was so intense but you've got to expect that. You've got to expect that power pressure. And then the midfield was so easy to play through. It's something we've talked about before with Postecoglou's teams. Looking at the game the way he set up, you thought Basuma, Bentancur, Sarr, that should have legs, that should have rigidity, but it didn't really have any of that. Liverpool sort of managed to get through them a lot. I mean, Carragher called them a disgrace afterwards, which felt pretty strong, but they didn't manage to have any sort of bravery on the ball. Whenever they got the ball, which was few and far between throughout the whole match, but particularly in the first half when the scores were obviously it was in Spurs' advantage at the first, and then when they went 1-0 down, it was still the tie was level. It just looked like they didn't really know what they were going to do with it when they got the ball, and they gave it away too cheaply. And then the attacking front three players. I mean, obviously Richarlison went off injured. So on that note, if you haven't seen, he went down clutching his calf again, which must be really worrying. I'm not sure what the latest is on that. But, going off the ball and having to be taken off, given his injury history, but particularly with a calf problem. I think that's what it was, what it looked like, is really worrying from Richarlison's point of view. It just looked like he was playing really well at the moment, or looked like he was coming back strong after his most recent injury layoff. And worryingly, I suppose Ange said the other day, in fact, an answer to one of my questions in the build-up to this game, was he felt like Richarlison was probably playing a bit more than he hoped for. So I really sincerely hope it's not from overplaying that he's done that injury, and I hope it's not serious. But anyway, he didn't really have much of a kick. Matisse Tell when he came on, or Matisse Tell, I've been told, I've been pronouncing it wrong. A very difficult game to come on for your debut, but he barely got a look in throughout the whole game. Very difficult for him, and save for a shot that hit the bar, actually a really good effort from Son in the second half. He had another difficult game. I feel like he's been playing better of late, but he looked tired and he didn't look like he would provide the cutting edge that he has done many times in years gone by. And the same with Kulusevski, who's been Spurs' best player this season, but he's been a bit off. It looks like the season's caught up with him as well in recent weeks. He's definitely not making the same kind of impact, and he didn't again tonight at all. So those sort of senior players and the sort of attacking midfield players in particular, there's a lot talked about. This is the defence. Once again, a new defence hadn't played together, but I don't really think they were the problem. The fact that when you're sort of turning to Jed Spence to suddenly play right wing in the second half, it actually did quite well, to be fair. Sort of sums up, the issues that Postecoglou's team was having. And I think ultimately, like I was saying before, it just felt like Ange talked quite a lot during his time here about whenever he's been questioned about his approach. And the reason he doesn't want to throw out his approach, at least in times gone by, is if you go away from your principles, what are you left with if you give in? And he's talked about that when he talks about other managers, like when he talks about Vincent Kompany last season at Burnley. Tonight I saw him going a completely different way. To be honest, at Brentford at the weekend, they went more defensive, they played deeper, more compact, and it worked for them. I don't think Brentford were very clinical, and Liverpool were a massive, massive step up. And it just didn't work at all. And I think afterwards he talked about being too passive, but it was the way they played. I don't really know. It's sort of low to criticise them too much for that style change, because people like me have been calling for it to be a bit more pragmatic at times. So and I think if you do sort of go gung ho at Liverpool, you're on to hiding for nothing, and you could get absolutely thrashed. But it was more the fact that when they did fall behind, 2-0, and needed to get back into the game. They had sort of nothing coming back, and it was just a real sort of departure from what we've seen from Postecoglou when he's at his best. And I'm aware that it's difficult with so many games and injuries, but I mean, to not have a shot on target, that's a pretty damning stat from his point of view. And as watching on TV, Alan Smith doing the commentary, he said that there was basically no jeopardy in the game, and that is pretty accurate. It never really felt like, from minute one, to be honest, it felt like Liverpool had the making of Spurs, and it wouldn't be long until they turned it around, and in the end it was comprehensive, and that is pretty damning. So I don't know if people really want to relive it, but let's just go quickly through it. But it was pretty much one-way traffic from the beginning. Spurs seemed to defend pretty well for the first half an hour, and you wondered whether this sort of backs to the wall job, when they were being so deep, fullbacks not pushing on at all, pretty much really compact and trying just to sort of defend their way through this, might actually work. But that seems, on reflection, like a completely deluded opinion, as if that was ever going to work against this Liverpool team, of all teams, who've been brilliant this season, in the hunt for all 4 trophies. And you never know, they might actually do it, because Arne Slot's got them playing so well, and they're so fit. Their teams, really not really struggle for injuries much at all this season, definitely compared to Spurs, and they just look like they're moving on to another level all the time. So it was never going to be able. They're never going to be able to hold on, and it was Gakpo who broke the resistance. I think about 34 minutes in. Unsurprisingly, Spurs get the ball and are trying to break with it and don't really know what to do with it. Basuma, I think it was, lost possession. Salah puts the ball in across. A nice run forward from Curtis Jones sort of creates a bit of confusion, allowing Gakpo to pull away from Archie Gray, who was playing right back in this game, and then moved to left back in the second half. And it was a brilliant first time finish for apparently his 10th goal at Anfield in his last 10 games, which shows you what a hot streak he's on right now. They managed to make it to half time. So obviously at that point, you're thinking, okay, Liverpool are always going to score, but Tottenham have always got a goal in them. At least normally you think they do. And it's 1-1 on the 1-0 on the night, 1-1 overall. It's half time. But I suppose even then the stats were pretty concerning. I mean, at half time, Tottenham, this is Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham, had only completed 10 successful passes in the final third. I know we can get a bit carried away with stats, and obviously they were playing a way more defensive game and trying to sort of, as I say, defend their way to a result here. But for context, the average in the Premier League has been 43 at half time, so 10, and 88 is how many Liverpool put together. So it just shows you how far off it they were from an attacking point of view. And in the second half, they basically got blown away. I was thinking back to games like Leicester, where obviously concentration issues early on in the second half. Saw that game turn around, and you're thinking, right, just try and keep it tight, which I guess was the tactic. So it's not like I've got any of the answers. I'm just can only sort of reflect on what we've just seen. But it wasn't long until they gave a penalty away, and again I think Spurs lost the ball in the build up to it. Lovely ball round the corner. Nunes goes through. Kinski comes out, gets nowhere near him. Absolutely no complaints on the penalty, which Salah steps up and probably scores one of the best penalties I think I've ever seen. Absolutely belting penalty into the top, the keeper's right, so the top left-hand corner. Unbelievable penalty for what apparently is his 15th goal against Tottenham in his career. I mean, Mo Salah's been an unbelievable player against pretty much everyone, but it feels like he really enjoys playing against Tottenham. And I don't even think he was that amazing tonight, to be honest, and he still ended up with a goal and assist, which shows you what you're up against. In such a brilliant player who's been, without a doubt, the outstanding player in English football in the Premier League this season, albeit this was the Carabao Cup. Apparently that's his 26th goal of the season, and he only got 25 last year, and we're only at early February, so shows you what a player he was, or he is. And then, the game's over when Szoboszlai, who was brilliant in that 6-3 win in the league at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium back in, December. He tucks a really nice finish away, kind of similar to the goal he scored actually there. Lovely finish, 3-0 game over, and to sort of rub salt in the wounds, albeit it was probably fair. I think 4-0. I don't know if it flattered Spurs. 4-0 is probably about par for tonight. I don't know what the XG was, but I think 4-0 felt like a fair reflection of the dominance Liverpool had. And Van Dijk, who's just what a player, unbelievable player, comes in with a header from a set piece to kill the game off. And that was it. And then Spurs are out, and in their big chance, albeit like I say, a difficult chance away to Liverpool. They've beaten Man City, they've beaten Man United, albeit they are those teams as good as as their names are. And Man City, when they beat Man City, it was actually kick-started this awful run of Man City. So they weren't the Man City we were thinking of. We think of now. Those were great results, but Liverpool this season are just different gravy. I think they're going to win the league by at least 10 points. And generally, no one ever wins all 4 trophies, so I'm sure something will go wrong, but they look absolutely imperious, fantastic under Arne Slot. But having said that, this was an opportunity and one that Redknapp afterwards was pretty damning when he said that he couldn't remember a team that had sort of put up less of a fight than Spurs had in this situation they were in. Semi-final chance to sort of change history, and that was pretty scathing. Michael Dawson was saying it was a damaging defeat, given the state of play going into the game, what was on the line. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait to see. Do you think this is going to be damaging? Do you think this is the word damaging is quite strong, really? Does it mean like it's going to have an impact on things going forward and confidence? Is it really going to knock them? Maybe. Like I say, Liverpool away is a really tough fixture, and you're not expected to win most of the time, so it's not exactly a shock result. But the manner of the defeat was pretty convincing and a pretty hammer blow to confidence, you would imagine. And Carragher was talking about Spurs generally, about growing up watching Tottenham and how you never really expect them to win anything when they never really do. They don't really do anything when it comes to these big moments, and I don't know if that's quite fair on their history, but there are definitely moments along the course of definitely the times I've been watching Spurs in my lifetime where the Monaco Spursy comes along and or when they somehow lose, or whether they get to a big game like this and they just easily second best. And I say that as a Newcastle fan who has very much seen that happen from their team. At least I guess this outcome means I won't have to have Newcastle versus Spurs in the final. That sort of mixed feelings about that game. But with my Spurs hat on, it was just disappointing, really, really disappointing. And Ange afterwards, I guess he didn't sugarcoat it. He said Liverpool were too good. I guess he fronted up about the quality of that they had, and they were too passive, which is the similar kind of words to what he said after the North London derby. But I feel like after the North London derby, and I was there as opposed to watching off a TV, I got a real sense of like anger from Ange after that game, which I almost thought was kind of strange because yes, they lost, and yes, Arsenal were completely dominant, but it was a pretty narrow defeat. And I don't think it was as like humbling as his words afterwards sort of merited. A bit different here, but here he's just sort of being more accepting of just how far off his team were, and didn't seem to be particularly angry. Just felt, he said it was disappointing. He felt like the team needed to be braver, but a lot of the time, at least in the Sky interview that I watched, he was just basically answering what was being asked of him. It felt like not going through the motions, but there wasn't that passion that you saw after the Arsenal game. It was more just, that was just an awful experience. They want to move on from it, but it was a bad defeat, and Redknapp called into question about Postecoglou's tactics. He was talking about changing it up, and he says he's sort of baffled by Postecoglou's tactics, and he feels like he's lost in his own tactics. But I almost found that kind of strange because I felt, yes, that's definitely been he's definitely been sort of puritanical in the way he's not changed from his approach in the past, and I think he's been fairly criticised for that, even though he wouldn't like, he pushed back on that. But in this case, he did change. It didn't work at all. I felt like he went from being the attacking gung-ho, if you want to put it that way, or very attacking approach. I didn't see any of that today. It was trying to sort of defend their way to a result, and it didn't work at all. And it was interesting seeing Arne Slot, because Slot obviously was very close to taking the Tottenham job. Before Postecoglou got the job, he decided to stay, got moved to Liverpool, and he's been unbelievable since. And look, he's got better players. Liverpool got some excellent players. They've got the best player in the league in Mo Salah, who is a generational talent, really. He's in probably the top 10 best players in the Premier League ever, up there. And Van Dijk might well be as well. He is the best centre-back around. And he's not just that, he's an absolute leader. Watching his interview after the game, he talks about how he's going to ensure no standards slip or anything like that. And you really believe him when you hear that. And even after that, not that Cayman Keller had a save to make in the game, but having him as a backup to Alisson just shows the strength and depth that they've got. And Núñez, is sometimes derided for his poor finishing, but he's a handful, and he won the penalty. Like, they've got real quality all over the pitch, and they are a cut above Spurs by a long way. And crucially, they've got all their big hitters fit, basically, although there was no Trent tonight, to be fair to them. But I think the manager as well has managed it brilliantly since taking over. I mean, you've just forgotten really how what a challenge it was to take over from a legend like Jurgen Klopp, and all the talk about how it might be Man United all over again just never was. And I guess the situations were different. Man United's squad was on the decline. Liverpool's isn't. It's on the up, and it didn't need much changing, and as was proven by the lack of activity in the transfer window. But still, Slot has been brilliant. If anything, he's taken them on to another level, and they look better now. And it does make you wonder, could Tottenham convinced him what he could have done with Tottenham? But that's not to sort of look at Postecoglou as if what might have been. I suppose I sort of am, but on this particular occasion, it felt like I don't know if he had a losing hand to begin with, given the level of players and the tiredness of his squad, but whatever hand he had, he didn't help himself by the approach that he had. As hard a challenge as it was, whereas Slot just capitalised on it completely. And as I think Carragher might have been saying, or maybe Redknapp afterwards, he was saying how basically this is the game that Liverpool wanted. Tottenham basically played into their hands, and it felt a bit like that, to be honest. And that is something that they can definitely reflect on as something that will, when they reflect on this opportunity missed, that'll be a big part of it. Having said that, as Postecoglou has said in his post-match interview, there is still much to play for. They're obviously in the FA Cup. It's a massive game this weekend. I'll be at Villa. I'll do one after the press conference tomorrow, a video after that. But obviously after the FA Cup game at Villa, that's a tough fixture. it's now looking like, I mean, if they can get through that, I guess we'll still focus on the FA Cup, but it's now looking like the Europa League is absolutely massive. This was an opportunity. It was a difficult opportunity to take, but not only did Spurs not take it, they didn't look like they ever had a chance of taking it, and that was probably the most damning aspect of tonight. Anyway, a tough night for Tottenham, a tough night for Ange Postecoglou, and a tough night for all you fans who must be very disappointed right now, but I guess a familiar sinking feeling after being in this situation sort of many times before, unfortunately. Anyway, I will do a video after tomorrow's press conference. We'll see what Ange is saying in the morning, and I'll speak to you then. Cheers, guys.